Game. I'm Laurie Lawson, and tonight my guest is Orville Penn. Orville Penn. I'm calling him Opie because I've done this for way too many years, and I'm going to keep going. So I'm so thrilled that you're here.
It is a delight. I haven't seen you in such a long
I
time.
know. Don't say how long.
No, I won't.
But trust me, it is a long time.
I don't have a problem saying it, but I know it might offend you. But no, it's been a while.
No, I'm going to tell. I'm going to say 40 years. We decided 40 years we have not seen each other, but we've kind of kept in touch.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
my memory of you is that you were always a leader of people in doing things that would get them further. And I went, and that's why I said, you know what, you got to come up and be on this show because that's what we're trying to do with coaching too.
Absolutely,
I'm thrilled that you're here. As far as I'm concerned, you're the master.
You're right. That attitude, and I got that when I was in college. I
Really?
met a guy, a gentleman by the name of Stokely Carmichael.
Oh, wow.
Kwame Ture. Changed his name to Kwame Ture.
Yes, yes.
Late Stokely Carmichael. And we were sitting down one day, a few of us students, and he said to us, asked us, well, why are you at this university? And I looked at him, I said, well, that's a crazy question. I mean, why am I at this? I'm here to get
I made money.
I'm here to get an education. I said, well, I raised my hand. I'm here to get an education. And he looked at me. He said, that's a wrong answer.
Oh.
I said, what? He said, that is a terrible answer. He said, you're at this university so that you can learn, so that you can make lives better for people.
Wow.
You must take your knowledge,
goodness.
take your education, and you must go into the world and make their lives better. I never forgot that. And that's something that was shared with me, I think that was back in 1974, 1975.
Wow.
And that stayed with me all throughout, to this very day.
That's
very
amazing.
day.
And to have it come from Stokely Carmichael.
You're
like,
educated,
oh my gosh,
you're educated to help people. That's what it's all about. You're not educated to make money. Now, making money might be a consequence of you educating others, but your motivation is to educate people, help people's lives to be better. And I always remember that. It stayed with me. So everything I did, just about with regards to working in the community, I did that as a result of what he said, and ultimately started working with the agency that you and I started working with back when, which was a community action agency intended to help people who were disadvantaged.
We'll give them a shout out. It's Sure Up.
Sure Up.
And it's still in existence,
Still in
which I think
existence.
it might be the only one around.
Well, actually, there are in that area, yes, but there are about 1,000 similar organizations across the United States.
That's so good to know.
Yeah, but we are one of the older. I said we. I've since retired. Sure Up is one of the older ones. Sure Up has been around over 50-some years, trying to help people that are disadvantaged to become advantaged.
Or just have an equal leg. Because I remember, because I started in Head Start in Sure Up, and it was to give kids that really didn't have the cultural experiences, not that anything to do with their brain, just to give them the experience of having the same culture as other people who are going to start school. So, and what were you doing there?
Well, I started out in job training, training people for jobs. And I ended in job training.
All right.
But over those many years, I also did supervise our food service program as well as our transportation unit.
Right.
So I had quite a bit of experience. But at the core of all of that, and what motivated me every day, was what Stokely said, or what he shared with me back in 1974. You are in this thing called life to make people's lives better.
Wow.
Don't you ever forget that. I never did.
That's amazing, because it's funny, before we started the show, Opie was saying, well, what are you doing? Why are you doing this coaching stuff? And I said, and that's a fair question. Why am I doing this? But I knew that I had, done the career ladder and said, you know what, is the Peggy Lee, is that all there is? I'm not enjoying this.
Right.
And when I did coaching, it was like, wow, I want everybody to feel this. I want everybody to realize they have more potential than they're living up to, and that they can expand their horizons. And so I didn't talk to Stokely, but
I think there's a common link between us, and that's probably why we connected back then, because we were motivated and driven
I remember our offices were across the hall. Look, and I used to watch it. He would have all these kids, like almost like the Pied Piper, and it was like just listening. And we used to call him. I don't know if you know that we used to call you the philosopher because he had such beautiful.
Yeah, right. Now you tell me.
Well, nobody's there anymore that we did that.
Yeah,
but
right.
But he had such beautiful philosophies and ways of living, just like what you said. So.
And I think that pulled us together. The fact
I think
that,
it did.
Yeah,
I think it did.
You didn't have a Stokely, but
no, I didn't. I had an OP.
Yeah, well, you had it before you met me. That's how we connected.
But it was you enhanced for sure.
I never, and you likewise for me. But I never forgot that. I never forgot that. And to this very day, even though I've since retired from Shore Up, I still do that in a different way.
We're going to talk a little bit about that, if you don't mind. But first, we're going to talk about what you did. When you say job training, what does that mean? What did you do? Because you were taking people from a segment of society that really didn't get to have job training, or what were you doing? What were you doing over there across the hall?
I'm glad you asked. I hadn't thought about it. Well, we dealt with people. The whole agency dealt with people that were economically disadvantaged, and typically the persons that we came in contact with were economically disadvantaged because they lacked formal education, they lacked job training skills, they lacked the people skills that were needed to procure employment. So job training provided them with the skills, job readiness skills, and the techniques that they needed to have, as well as the formal education support that they needed to have in order to meet the needs of employers. Employers told us what they were looking for in employees, potential employees. So we provided that to people that were economically disadvantaged. So my responsibility was to supervise the carrying out of that in many cases. And because the agency that we're talking about, an agency similar to it, across this country, private nonprofits, we struggled for funds. Consequently, you did multiple jobs. Yeah. So you might have been I was managing a program, as many of us were, but we'd also have to do the face-to-face, hands-on kind of work. So sometimes I do the job readiness training, the leadership development training, all with the intent of getting them prepared to meet the needs of employers. And that's where that whole job training piece came in. And in doing that, I realized that the biggest impediment that we had in accomplishing that was getting people to realize their own potentials. And there was a mental block, which I think had a lot to do with the environment that they were in. The environment that they were in allowed them to go this high.
Right.
And they never thought about going anywhere higher than that, so they would not pursue further education or job training. They just were in a support circle that kept them at this level.
And then they would do things that would keep them at that level.
And they would do things that would keep them at that level.
Because that was the zenith, I guess.
That was the zenith. That's exactly correct.
Yeah.
And what we try to do with job training is we try to take that fulcrum here by exposing them to other things that they needed to be aware of.
And not role modeling, but just saying here's potential, and you can do this. And
exactly, we did whatever was necessary, and people are different, and their backgrounds, even though there was a commonality, there was also some differences, and you try to meet them. We try to meet them where they were at, socially, educationally, et cetera, and move them to the next level. We realized that not everyone would go into a job, or not everyone would get a GED if they didn't have one, or get have a college diploma if they didn't have one. But what we try to do is we try to move them closer to that. So if we move them closer to obtaining a GED or obtaining employment, we felt that was an accountment.
That is so funny because as we were talking, again, we've been catching up. Can you imagine 40 years of catching up? But that I started at Shore Up as a career development coordinator, and that's exactly. And they didn't know what that was, and neither did I. So we just faked it. But that's exactly what we did. It was whatever's needed that these people were not getting. It's like, well, let's provide it. Yeah. And by the time you got there, which was just a few years later, I think you had it defined. And were you dealing mostly with youth?
Mostly with youth initially, and then as the years progressed, adults. We went from one end of the age spectrum to the other. We started dealing with persons that were 55 years and older, and then we backed back a little bit and started dealing with persons that were between 25 and 55. So
the whole spectrum,
the whole spectrum, but the majority, yes, were youth, and I define youth to be 14 to 25 years of age.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a couple questions. Which group was most challenging for you? Or which group did you find had the most challenges? Maybe I should ask that.
Well, you asked that question. The group that I found most difficult to deal with, believe it or not, were youth, female youth.
Oh.
Female youth, there were a number of different barriers that they had to overcome. Many of them that we came in contact with were without fathers in the household, and they were dealing with that, being loved by a male figure, and many times they would fall into pseudo relationships with males that posed problems.
Bigger
for
problems,
them. And we'd always tell them. I mean, we could tell, and we told them this. We could tell who's going to be in poverty and who's going to move out of poverty. We said it a little fancier.
Said it nicer.
Yeah, a little fancier than that. Yeah, a little fancier than that. And you know, if you're single, female, with kids, lowly educated, that's a formula for poverty. You're going to be no ifs, buts, or ands. No ifs, buts,
Not that you can't overcome it, but
Absolutely.
you have to realize first that you've got some challenges that you've created.
You must. You mentioned that, and that goes into that whole piece on accountability and people knowing that they must be accountable. They've got to be the primary source. They must be primarily responsible for where they are in life. And one of the things I shared with them, and sometimes I get some pushback from some of them, and I'd ask adults as well as young people, where do you want to be in life? Where do you want to be? Well, I want to be a doctor. I want to be an engineer. Well, I mean, where are you now? Well, I'm here. I can't find a job. I'm working at this fast food business. I said, you want to get to that point, but do you realize where you're at is where you want to be?
Wow, that's heavy duty.
Yeah.
You knew that then?
Where
How'd you go through all this coach training and figure that out? Yeah.
Where you are is where you want to be. Because, I mean, not because you say it means it's going to come to fruition. You've got to say it, you've got to believe it, and you've got to live it. You've got to take the necessary steps to get to that point. And there's a sacrifice you have to pay. And the sacrifice, the degree of the sacrifice that you're willing to make is linked to the degree of success that you make. I mean, when we look at history, we find that men and women who were willing to sacrifice, and I'd leave that blank for them. What do you think they were willing to sacrifice to achieve greatness? What's the greatest thing that you can, the biggest thing that you can sacrifice to achieve greatness? I'd wait for them. Money, a kid. I'd say, no. The thing that you can sacrifice most, or the greatest sacrifice, is your life. And when you're willing to say, I am willing to put my life on the line to achieve this, chances of you achieving your goal becomes much greater.
One of my favorite sayings is, every dream needs an Excel spreadsheet.
Okay.
Which
okay,
means
absolutely,
have the dream,
absolutely.
but you can't just, I think one of the books that did such a great disservice would be The Secret. It's like, because,
yeah, I've read this, yeah.
It told you all you have to do is think it, and there it is. No, that's not how it works. If it did, we'd all be rich.
The Secret, I read that. Well, it starts in the mind, obviously.
But you've got to take it further.
You've got to live it. And see, that whole piece on accountability, we always try to shift the burden back to them. What are you doing? I mean, exactly where you want to be is where you're at. Or where you're at is exactly where you want to be.
And there's nothing wrong with being comfortable, but if you really truly want to go a little further, you're going to have to get out of that comfort zone.
Well, understand and realize the ramifications of comfortability.
Okay, what are they? I love it, yeah.
You may not achieve your goal.
There you go. I love that,
If you want to be, I don't know, a doctor, a physicist, I mean, you just can't sit back and take it easy. You've got to know the rules of the game and how to get to where you need to get to, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
You know, the thing, Laurie, that really, it really bothered me a whole lot when I did job training, because I came in contact with so many people that had potentials, great potentials, and they just let those potentials go to waste. And I mean, thinking they want to be this and thinking they want to be that, but not willing to pay the price. You know, I had a radio program also in Salisbury, and I interviewed guests from.
Is that what's at the bottom of the screen where they can find your radio?
Yeah.
Check that out.
Yeah,
check that out.
I brought guests in from around the country, and we had this one guy I'll never forget the interview I had with him. Barrington Irving was his name. And Barrington Irving,
I'm calling you out, Barrington, whoever you are.
Yeah, young Jamaican.
Okay.
At the time I interviewed him 7, 8 years ago, I think he was like 18, 19, not older than 25. And what Barrington did is Barrington hung around airports and long story shortened, Barrington learned about aeronautics and flying planes, and he flew a single-engine plane around the world by himself.
Wow.
I interviewed him, and I said, Barrington, what prompted you to do that? And he said, Mr. Penn, I had nothing to lose.
Ah.
He said, and there were people who discouraged me, people who didn't want me to do it, and today I train young people to get into the field. And what I did is I put a challenge out to them. I'm going to be working with some young people. They're going to build a plane. I'm going to show them to build a plane, and then I'm going to get in it and I'm going to fly it. I'm going to fly that single-engine plane myself. He
had young people build his plane?
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Build a single-engine plane.
Courageous young man, for sure.
Go on the Barrington Irving. Do a Google search on Barrington Irving.
I'm going to.
And he talked about the struggles that he went through, the lack of support. Nobody wanted to help him because there was quite a ton of money involved in flying a plane around the globe, and nobody wanted to help him. And he kept pushing. And this is a part of what people have to do also. You must realize what your goals are, what your aspirations are. You must continue to push. You must continue to go. You're going to encounter some naysayers, and you're going to encounter some roadblocks and so forth, like we both have.
Yeah.
But you keep struggling. It's your dream. It's your vision. Be willing to pay that price and keep pushing. And that's what he did. He kept pushing, and the money came. And he flew around the world. Fascinating stuff.
I'm going to go check that out. I'm dying to know about Barrington Irving.
Barrington Irving. He's
Irving,
I-R-V-I-N. He said, I had nothing to lose, Mr. Penn. I had nothing to lose. And I wanted to do this. And I was willing to give everything for it. And today he's a successful young man. He's been on NBC, CBS, and the major networks telling his story.
Okay, so you didn't call him out. You didn't reveal anything.
I don't think he would have mind. He would not have mind.
He doesn't sound like he's shy.
No, he would not have mind. But what we see in him, and I share that because that's a piece. That's the common thread that we all need to have in order to be.
Any tips and tricks on how to instill that?
Well, first of all, realize the challenge that you're with. Realize that the impediment is your thinking.
Yeah, exactly.
Realize
that's
that.
beautiful.
Yeah,
yes,
realize the impediment is your thinking. And once you change your thinking, which might require you to change friends, change environments, but once you change your thinking and start associating yourself with people of common thoughts with regards to what you'd like to achieve, it helps to propel you to get to that point. You want to be in a group where everybody knows more than you as it pertains to where you'd like to go to.
And I never understood people who resented people who knew more. It's like, gosh, tell me what you know.
Exactly.
I'll share it with me, but tell me. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So I mean, that get out of that circle that you're in and get into a circle that is consistent with where you want to be, and you're going to learn and be willing to pay that sacrifice. But realizing, and it's so difficult to convey that. It was so difficult, it probably still is, to convey this point. You are where you want to be in life.
That one's a hard one. That one would be a hard one to. It's like, no, I really want to win the lottery, or no, I really want to not be in New York City,
and I say, okay, go ahead. I'll see you in 5 years. Now, obviously, this is short of people that may have physical handicaps or mental. We're not okay, but okay. Our task is to spread the message. You take it or you leave it.
Yeah.
I don't spend a whole lot of time. I'm going to present it to you. I'm going to work with you in getting there. I believe I know a little bit more than you do with regards to the ins and outs of things. If
nothing else, age,
If nothing else,
give me some credit,
If nothing else, age. I'm going to present it to you. It's up to you. You take it or leave it.
Yeah. So it's funny, I just had a conversation on the phone this morning with another coach, and it's like, how do you take responsibility in today's culture where it seems as if everybody's there, and I've just finished with the debates and all kinds of crazy stuff, in the political culture where everybody sort of is looking for somebody to blame. It's like, how do you instill the need to take responsibility, because it seems like we've slipped into something that it's okay to it's okay if you can find somebody to blame for it. Then you're free. You're home free, and you got away with it.
Yeah.
Right.
When you find people to blame, you have really relegated your success to something external.
Beautiful. Yes. Yes. Yeah.
You want to start with you. You can control you.
That's the only thing you can control.
You
actually,
can control you. And there's a I can't remember it off the top of my head, but in the past I've talked about the 8 rungs of responsibility. The lower 4 and the upper 4. The lower 4 being a person that's consciously unaware. That's the lowest form.
Consciously unaware.
Consciously
Okay.
unaware.
I don't want to know nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the second tier would be you want to blame others.
Mm-hmm.
The third tier would be having the attitude there's nothing I can do to get to what needs to happen. And the other tier would be I'll wait and see.
Ah, the wait and see.
Mm-hmm.
Now, sometimes, that's funny, sometimes I'll go, just chill, wait and see. I do that sometimes.
Yeah, well,
and it doesn't get you anywhere, but you do wait and see.
Yeah. Typically people,
You're
those
right,
are
because
called
it
the
gives
lower
somebody
tier.
else. I'm waiting to see somebody else do something. Yes,
I not
yes.
only see that with young people and adults that we've worked with over the years, but I also see it in the workforce. I mean, I was on the administrative staff of where I worked, and you didn't get a report in. Well, I didn't know it was due then. Or when you found it, well, she didn't tell me. I didn't know. My supervisor didn't tell me.
Yeah.
And then wait and see. Well, I hope nobody asked me for this report. And we can do the same kind of exercise applies to the school system. A young man, I heard this, Bruce Gordon, who was a CEO with Verizon. I heard him share the story. His son comes home and his son says, "Dad, I got a report due tomorrow, and I haven't started on it." And Bruce says, "Well, why haven't you started it?" "Well, the teacher didn't tell me." Oh, no, the first one is, I didn't know about it. Well, why didn't you know about it? Well, the teacher didn't share it with me, you see. And then, well, what are you going to, it's due tomorrow. Bruce would ask his son, well, what are you going to do about it now? Well, it's not much I can do, so I'll just wait and, maybe the teacher won't ask for the report. Maybe she'll give us some extra time. That's what unaccountable people who are not, that's the paradigm of how they think.
And you're right, you're handing it over to someone else to decide your future.
You're deferring it. Whereas accountable people could have said the same situation. Well, the teacher shared it, but I wasn't listening, Dad. I should have been listening, but I wasn't listening. And assuming full responsibility. I will assume full responsibility. The report is due tomorrow, Dad. You're a pretty smart man. Can you help me put this together? But even if you don't, Dad, I'm going to do it
get
myself.
it done. Yeah.
See, that's the other tier of people who get things done. They assume responsibility, total responsibility. And in this particular example I shared, just a few hours left, I'm going to get it done. I'm going to do it. I'm not going to sit and wait for the teacher to
yell at me,
or change the date. I'm not going to. So, and that whole mindset, I see a lot of that mindset in our society today, not only with trainees that we've worked with, but also adults. I see that quite a bit.
Oh yeah. And I see a lot of hiding or comfort. I guess comfort zone protection.
Comfort zone,
I guess I won't call it hiding. I'll call it comfort zone protection.
That's
it's
good.
like
That's good.
I don't want to move. I don't want to get yelled at. I don't want to get. I've kind of got my life together. I don't want to mess it up.
Right. That's good.
And it's like, and I guess it's. But when I did that, and I mean, I did all the steps to climb the career ladder, and I got it to the top, and it was like, this is not what I want. I'm not. You can feel it. You can feel that it's really not speaking to your core values.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You were in touch with yourself. You and you were true to
No,
yourself.
there were times when I was totally not in touch.
Oh,
but yeah,
well, in a particular case,
yeah.
yeah.
But most of the time, it was like, I'm going to move to New York and I'm going to do this, and I did, and I think that's another great thing, flexibility. It's like, okay, when you reach your dream, if you need something else, go after that too.
Yeah,
you don't get to stop.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. You don't get to stop. You realize that the sky's the limit, and you pursue the avenues that you need to pursue. But you don't. If we can change this.
That's it. Change your. I have a radio show. It's Coach Chat, and it's like, and the whole philosophy: change your perspective, change your life. That's it. All you got to do is look at it differently.
If it's not working, if you're not where you want to be, don't blame it on this
or
money
that,
or money.
Yeah,
and don't do that. Look at look at yourself. Assume responsibility yourself. And if you can do that, you're beginning to become a responsible, accountable person that's prone to succeeding.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
You can see why he is a gem and why we adored him when he was at Shore Up.
Well,
But
the feeling was mutual.
Oh, thank you, thank
The
you.
feeling was mutual. You know?
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
But speaking of not stopping, now that you've retired, what are you doing with all this marvelous altruism and need to help people? What are you doing with that?
Still, that's going to be in my DNA until I die, until I leave
love
this
it.
planet. So one of the things we're doing now, I still am involved. I've always been involved with community projects in my hometown, volunteering and helping. Right now I'm doing a little bit of work with the census, trying to get the census to do an accurate count in
That'd be nice, yeah.
our community.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I'm also doing some work in the less impoverished places in the world, in the West Indies, trying to get solar energy onto some of those small islands, the islands like St. Kitts and Nevis, Antigua, places like that. So trying to help those, and not to get any money out of it. It's not, those folks pay an awful lot of money in energy services that they receive now, but to provide that solar energy to them at little or no cost to them. That's what I'm working on right now.
So he's gone from little teeny Salisbury to the world.
So I mean, the sky's the limit, and I'm not going to sit back and say, and feeling sorry for those people in the West Indies that struggle a lot from day to day, and there's something I can do, something I've got to do,
Wow.
and I'm going to do it. Barrington Irvin taught me well. He said, look, what do I have to lose?
That and I think Stokely is
And
like
Stokely, that's actually exactly correct. Stokely did it for me.
Yeah, and that secondhand information is just, it's like, because I do ask myself, why am I doing this? I'm not getting any money. I'm not doing it, and it's like I'm doing it because I want to help other people.
Right,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And I decided a long time ago that nonprofit was the way I wanted to go because I knew service was the answer.
Absolutely.
But I just didn't realize that it's in your DNA. But I like your description. Yes, it is in my DNA.
It's in your DNA. It's in your DNA, so you can't get it out. It's in
and
there.
you know what I love? I love that you said often in nonprofit you're doing 100 million jobs because you have to. There's no funding.
Yes.
I have friends, and they know who they are, and if they're watching, I call them out every time they go, well, it's kind of like that nonprofit attitude where you don't answer the phone. I go, oh, no. You cannot lay that on nonprofit. Nonprofit, I've never worked so hard in my life.
That's exactly
but
correct.
It was so rewarding.
Exactly.
So rewarding.
We did many jobs back then.
Everything.
Whether it was sweeping the floor, answering the
Exactly,
phone,
whatever you needed
managing
to
a
do.
program. You do what needed to get.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, job descriptions back then wasn't really important.
Well, I was just
to
going to say, it was you would never hear somebody go, it's not in my job description. What does that mean?
Yeah, whatever needed to get done, we did it.
Because it was a good, and I think that was such a good beginning for me, because it was my first real important job. It was just such a good foundation, such a good foundation. And I got to have great friends like you who come all the way to New York City, and we are out of time, but yes, I know.
Oh my gosh.
But I'm going to say,
there's a whole lot I wanted
open
to share.
invitation, come back. And he said, you called my bluff. I'm doing it again. Thank you, Opie.
You are quite welcome, Laurie.